Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video on my channel. If you're new here, my name is James and you're watching Wonderful World. And today's video is all about moss. If you follow my channel, then you know that I love creating beautiful bioactive vivariums for all of my reptiles and amphibians to live in. And much of the time, those vivariums include different types of moss. I love having moss in a vivarium. There's a certain zen quality to moss, and it really helps a vivarium look like it came straight out of nature. And I love being out in the forest. On many days, you can find me out hiking around in the woods. Whenever I go into a forest and see that it's full of different species of lush green moss, I know I'm in a very healthy and thriving ecosystem. I love getting down close to the ground and examining the forest floor and looking closely at all the small details, like what's living in the substrate and the mushrooms and fungi and moss. It's there that I draw inspiration for how I might want a vivarium to look. And whenever I'm out there, I'm also collecting things I can use in the vivariums, like stones and pieces of wood, and especially moss. I have my special places to go, especially for collecting moss. I only take what I need, and I only take small clumps from any single spot, so I don't deplete any one area of its moss. Last weekend, I had such a great time with my wife and son, and we rented a little cabin near Brown County State Park, a couple hours away from where I live in Indiana. It was such a great weekend and so good to spend some quality time with my family. We usually do that a couple times a year. We spend a lot of time cooking, sitting in the hot tub, and sitting by the fire at night. And of course, you know I love frogs. And one thing I love about summer is that the trees are full of frogs. I couldn't believe how the forest canopy sounded once nightfall came. And in the morning, while I was out wandering in the forest, I came across this little guy, a baby pickerel frog. He's absolutely beautiful, and I love the way his colors blend so perfectly with the colors of the leaf litter. And of course, I collected a bunch of moss. I'm going to use some of it to freshen up some of the vivariums, but I think I'll have plenty left over. So I'm going to show you how I set up a propagation box to grow the leftover moss until a time comes that I might use it. It's midsummer now, but by the time winter comes and it's cold and snowy, I'll be glad that I propagated this moss. But first, I added a little bit to Scarlet's vivarium. Really just in this front corner, because everywhere else in his vivarium he uses the substrate to burrow down into. I gave Scarlet a big piece of cushion moss, And right away, he came out of his hiding spot to inspect it. And from the looks of it, I think he likes it. And I added a lot of fresh moss to the dart frog vivarium. Moss holds water like a sponge, and it's really good for maintaining a high level of humidity in bioactive vivariums. So lots of moss is especially beneficial for dart frogs. And now I have all this leftover moss that I want to make sure stays healthy for some future projects that I have planned. For this, I'm using a plastic tub, and you want one that is somewhat clear so light can penetrate into it. And basically, you're going to set it up similar to a bioactive vivarium. I put in a layer of gravel to act as a drainage layer. And then I put down a piece of mesh as a barrier between the substrate and the drainage layer. And then a layer of substrate. I'm using the same ABG mix that I use in my vivariums, but I've added a bit of leaf litter to it. The substrate layer doesn't have to be very deep. Moss is a non-vascular plant, which means it doesn't have a root system, but it does have something similar to small roots that it uses to attach itself to the substrate or any rock or piece of wood that it might choose to grow on. I misted down the substrate and then put the moss down on top of it. I also collected a beautiful vining ground cover called partridge berry, and I definitely want to get some of this growing, so I'm going to stick some pieces of it throughout the moss, and we'll see how it does. I gave it all a good misting down, and there you have it. Just store the tub somewhere where it gets a little bit of indirect sunlight and mist it down a couple times a week with some RO or spring water. I'm really excited for some of the vivarium builds that I have planned, and you'll be seeing those soon, but I'm not quite ready yet. But when I get there, we'll come back and revisit these tubs to see how they're growing. If I'm lucky, there might be some fern spores in here, and I might end up with some ferns to use as well. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.